Somewhat later in the first hour of the program, we'll be joined by Randy Staples from Idaho Weekly Briefing. Randy has written a new book, and he's going to give us some details on how you might actually obtain a copy of that. A great cover on the book. I guess it's Randy. You see a fellow off in the distance standing along the Snake River, maybe doing some fishing. We'll have to ask him about that a little later in the program. He also had a column yesterday. You may have seen it. It's usually published statewide. Column yesterday. I happened to see it when I came home yesterday morning from a couple of errands and the like. And he is saying that because we have, well, I guess what some people in northern Idaho, the Panhandle, view as extremist people in elective office. The reason that is, the argument goes, it's because too many people stay home and don't go out and vote, as if somehow the people who are staying at home would all be moderates or liberals. And I'm not quite sure that that's the case. And actually, coming here from the East Coast, I have to tell you, I don't think it is extremist in northern Idaho as we believed it was back on the East Coast, and it certainly isn't in southern Idaho. 8 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, as well as online at newsradio1310.com. It's 50. Also, some changes coming most likely in the testing system for Common Core in the state of Idaho. We'll have some details on that shortly, but I wanted to open up the program today and just mention to you, I decided to drop by this event yesterday, which was organized by the members of 3% Idaho. They had a demonstration they organized in the parking lot, nowhere near actually the front door of the Winco grocery store, but they were still in that large parking lot here in Twin Falls. What they did is they organized, then they marched down Blue Lakes Boulevard, they went down to Falls Avenue, so they passed College Avenue, and then they marched down and they had a brief rally outside one of the gates at the College of Southern Idaho. The College of Southern Idaho has a board of trustees, and those trustees are also shared by the Refugee Resettlement Program, which is likely one of the most controversial subjects to ever come across this community in a very, very long time. I'm sure that if you go back throughout the history, you'll find a few more that were pretty serious. But this one has definitely dominated the news cycle. April, May, June, July, August, September, October. So now we're about 7 months into this, and it's still a very hot topic that people are discussing. I because of some arthritis in my right knee, I didn't do much of the marching with these people, but I took some photographs, and those are available at our KLIX Facebook page, as well as you can see those on our website, newsradio1310.com, if you have not yet seen them. So even with the threat of rain and a lot of people who are likely still at church, they got started at noon. They had about 100 people out there. I didn't do a serious count, but it was a bigger crowd than I thought I would see when I got there. And calling it large or small, that's really all relative when you consider the fact that the sky was threatening rain and you had people still who were coming out. And I really would like to thank the participants because I actually pulled into a bank parking lot and took some pictures from across the street at one point and was actually very much surprised by the honking of horns, which is usually a sign of support. It doesn't usually mean get out of my way. These people were on the sidewalk. Usually it's a sign of support. And I think that has to be taken account into this community. And I think that the argument that we keep hearing is that these people are just being mean-spirited and they don't like other people. Well, frankly, even if they were mean and didn't like other people, what would that have to do with security threats? And maybe we need to stand back for a moment, and the other side could consider that for a moment. I think that this notion that you have to vilify these people all the time isn't going to help you come to some sort of understanding with them. And I do believe that as this movement grows, because I thought 100 people, as I say, at noon on a Sunday with rain threatening was a pretty good turnout for this event. And these weren't just people who were old-timers who are set in their ways and they don't want ways to change. I was impressed by how many younger people were taking part in this event. Now, from a public relations standpoint, I have only one, how shall we put it, bit of advice. If they do something like this again, they had their 3% Idaho banner. That's great. That's the name of the organization that put this thing together. They had lots of American flags. They had Gadsden flags. In fact, I used to have one of those myself. I don't know where I stored it, but I used to have one of those somewhere in my personal effects. The thing is, I think that you're going to have people who are going to try to vilify this group on the left because a couple of them were carrying old Confederate battle flags. Specifically, that flag, which is known as the Confederate flag, was actually the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia. So it was not the national Confederate flag, but it's the one most associated with the Confederacy because it was likely the most elaborate. It's based on the old St. Andrew's Cross, which is the old Scottish flag, before that was absorbed into the Union Jack by the British government. So they had a couple of people in the crowd who were carrying those. I'm not opposed to that. I think that for people who carry that flag, especially in places like Idaho, they're carrying that flag because it's a sign of resistance. You'll hear all of the folks on the left scream it's a symbol of racism. It's got nothing to do with that for most people who actually own one or carry one. It's just to let you know that I don't play by the rules. The rules as you see them. And I've seen that flag flying in a great many places on back roads and at shops all over the region when I'm out for drives on weekends. In fact, I've got a whole series of photographs in one of our neighboring communities where I took photographs of the Confederate flag wherever I saw them on side streets or hanging from businesses. And you know what? My guess is those people, once again, are just trying to say, look, leave me alone. Don't tell me how to think. So it is a flag to these people that represents their resistance to the ever-creeping big brother in this country and to political correctness, which seems to be part of that. It's an ally of big brother. On the other hand, if I'm organizing a demonstration, a public demonstration, I would advise leaving them at home. And I'm going to tell you, because you're trying to convince people, aren't you? You're trying to convince other people who may not yet agree with you that this refugee resettlement program is a bad idea. But for a lot of people who were coming down Blue Lakes Boulevard yesterday and happened to see you marching along, and if they didn't know why you were out there or what the cause was, the first thing that they may have glommed onto, their eyes may have really focused on, were those battle flags, those Confederate battle flags. And then they're wondering, okay, exactly what are you people out here demonstrating against? And for some of those people, because they may see that flag in a different light, which they do, and I'm not saying they're right, but which they do, I think it's a bad presentation. Public relations, or as they call it now in media in Washington, the Beltway people call it optics. That is such a huge part of anything you do publicly any longer. So you're out there to be polite. You're out there to make a point. You're out there likely to win converts. Don't do anything to jeopardize that. It's 8:14. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. You've got to think about how that looks in media. And by the way, I saw the Times News website this morning, and sure enough, I have a photograph where you can see one of those flags in the background, but they have taken a picture of someone actually holding one of those flags quite prominently. I'm just telling you, they don't have to go out and say, hey, look at this, but they know that people will see that photo and go, gee, I don't know if I want to get involved. And that's the point. You have given folks in left-wing media an opportunity which you didn't have to give them. We have a caller with us. Our telephone number is 736-0300, and you're up next on the air on Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Yes, there's an interesting thing going on with Eastern Oregon and Washington, and this is about people standing up for what they believe in and disagreeing with the left. And there's literally, if you go almost all the way to Seattle and Portland, the hubs over there that vote liberal, the rest of Oregon and Washington is like Idaho. And literally there are Oregonians and Washingtonians who want to literally join Idaho because we think more like they do.
There was a farmer quoted, in fact, in a newspaper story, I think it was in the Nampa paper a couple of weeks ago, farmer from Eastern Oregon, and he's leading the petition drive on that.
And it's amazing, this story and what these people want to do. Now, realizing that this kind of thing and expanding the size of Idaho is probably never going to happen. But you see, these people have had it. The West Coast and the East Coast, these places are off their rockers. And the rest of us are out here trying to do our best and make a living and trying to raise our children. And we actually believe that there might be a higher power and that the Constitution matters.
I think that it would be a long shot that they would ever be able to break away. Thank you for the call. I'll tell you this. The country economically, if we end up in a long, prolonged, something akin to a great economic depression, yes, you will see a realignment of various states and various peoples. Boundaries will be redrawn. It'll happen. Hey, speaking of refugees, some of you may have been listening to the 8 o'clock newscast on Fox just before we opened the program today, and you happen to hear this story about refugees coming from Syria coming to the state of Michigan, where the Rhino governor, a fellow by the name of Rick Snyder, happens to be behind the movement.
President Obama is inviting thousands Syrian refugees into the United States. Many Republicans opposing this, but Michigan's Republican governor says they are not just welcome, but wanted in his state. For starters, Dearborn, a suburb of Detroit, has become a magnet for Arab immigrants. Many of the stores and restaurants along Michigan Avenue have signs in Arabic, for example, but there's an economic angle to Governor Rick Snyder's invitation, too. The state has lost both population and jobs. Syrians who have cleared security checks, he argues, can help him reverse that trend.
So we heard that on Fox News just about 20 minutes ago. 15 minutes. We'll call it 15 minutes. Somebody out there is, going to hold me to the accuracy of whatever I say, so I better bring that up. Why do they need to bring these people in? Well, because for years, governments in Michigan have been driving people away. So he wants to bring them in to help fill that void. Now, he's a Republican, so-called. The fact of the matter is, though, Michigan has been run by liberals for a good part of the last half century, and its biggest city has been destroyed by liberals, and people have just packed up and left, and they've gone southwest, they've come here to the northwest. There's a huge drain coming out of those blue states. And so their answer is, well, we'll just import more people that we can tax. You know what's going to happen in a couple of generations? They're going to pack up and leave. Well, all right, then we'll bring in some more people from somewhere else around the world and rake them over the coals when it comes to taxes. Don't they have any better solutions than that? Dearborn does have a large community. They came over in the 1950s working in automobile plants, again, as a source of cheap labor. Even though you had a lot of unionized workers working in the automobile industry at the time, they wanted people who would be perhaps quieter in the workplace and more acceptable when it came time for concessions. The whole notion of bringing these people into this country is to lower labor costs. Ultimately, that means everyone is going to have less. Well, okay, the people who are actually benefiting from that, small number, I'm beginning to sound like Bernie Sanders, I know, small number are going to be making some really big bucks. But they don't care about you. And this whole argument, it's the right thing to do, and I'm being compassionate, and oh, those poor folks over there, well, a lot of those people weren't very nice to start with. It's all really, it comes down to that. It's about, hey, we've already chased everyone else away because of our tax policies, so we'll bring in some more people and we'll harass them. And we'll get them to work for about half of what everybody else was making. There'll be a day sometime, I guess, in the next couple of generations when we'll be back at third world levels in this country. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. It's 50. Common Core may be on the way out the door.